And we're back.
Yeah.
That was a long hiatus.
You can tell it's been a long time.
Yeah, Nick, you kind of got the woolly thing there. You're moving all the hair different around.
Jeremiah Johnson, right.
There you go. Yeah. So we'll call this Season 2B. We're back, and we're here to talk some more films. The theaters are still, getting ready to open up, but we got some classics to talk about, or maybe some less than seen potential classics.
Potential classic, and this is actually a film that I like and develop attraction. So when it initially came out, Blowout was not a successful hit.
Mm-hmm.
But people that love films love this movie, and we're going to kind of explain why filmmakers and film lovers actually appreciate this movie.
Yep. The filmmaker, the film guy, is the hero of our story, and hey, we're film guys, so maybe we'll be the heroes of this episode. We'll talk about Blowout today on Kyle and Nick on Film. Welcome back to Kyle and Nick on Film. I'm Kyle Goethe from GoatFilmReviews.com.
I'm Nick from the St. Paul Filmcast. If you love movies, eventually, sometime in your life, you've seen a Brian De Palma film.
Mm-hmm.
And probably, if you love movies, eventually you talk to somebody who's a fanatic Brian De Palma fan.
Yes.
So eventually it becomes that you have to talk about a Brian De Palma movie if you're going to do about movies.
Yep, and there's a wide berth too, because he's known for some of his bigger works, his Untouchables, his Scarface, his Carrie. He's known for some really less than stellar products like The Black Dahlia, Mission to Mars, Femme Fatale. But today we're kind of going with what I think is an unseen Brian De Palma film. I do think that, fanatics are going to know it, of course, but this is one that I think skirted by, got some pretty good reviews, and then just hasn't really been at the forefront. But a lot of cinephiles really kind of treat this as like a lost treasure,
Yeah, a lot of film fanatics people and people who make films do appreciate this one.
Yeah. In fact, fun fact, Blowout is one of Quentin Tarantino's favorite movies, and that's why he chose John Travolta to cast in Pulp Fiction. So,
yeah. I can see kind of why
Travolta... Yeah, I can see why he would love it, too, because he's like, I'm a film person.
Yeah.
So, the, quick, diagnostic on the film here. John Travolta plays Jack. He is a sound guy. Basically, one night he sets upon himself to get some new sounds for a horror film he's working on. He's got old sounds. He needs new sounds.
Which is funny because I don't know if you know about this, but people that not in the know of movies, all the sound that you hear is not actually all recorded when they film it. There's actually stock footage of re-recorded film that people get to use. It's the,
we have our classic Wilhelm scream of
the Wilhelm scream, but always stock footage of recordings, and people constantly insert them in the movies.
Mm-hmm.
Or sometimes the recording is not well, and you have to re-record stuff. So the premise is something shocking. I think people that don't know too much about making movies, but this is very common for people who
very common practice, and it's something where I kind of had to explain to my wife. We started watching the movie together, and she was asking a lot of questions about it. And so basically, Jack takes it upon himself to go get some new audio footage, and witnesses and hears basically a car accident that may have been caused by sinister means, I guess, and gets involved in kind of a techno film noir kind of, literally film noir,
which is kind of
a romance with Sally. So
the political thriller point to this story kind of is in the aftershock of a lot of political scandals that happened in the 70s, for instance, like the Ted Kennedy situation, which is his car goes in the water, and a public assassination of his brother John F. Kennedy, and all that stuff. So, and then you have Nixon and stuff. So it's very much in the aftershock of all these political scandals that happened in the early 70s and late 60s.
Yeah, and Blowout came out in 1981, basically at the end of a 10-year-long conspiracy theory explosion in cinema. There were 17 films that dealt with conspiracy theories and political machinations that came out from 71 to 81, which I think it's pretty incredible. So coming out upon that, I can see why it's skirted by and kind of just disappeared, because I really do think this one disappeared for a while, and you only really know it, if you are introduced by someone else to it. It's kind of like the videotape from The Ring. So, Nick, let's start with what's something you really, really loved about the movie?
Actually, I think because if you really appreciate it, it's Brian De Palma. Absolutely, is Brian De Palma, even though he doesn't consider it his best movie.
Mm-hmm.
But you have his classic traits of split screen, which Tarantino uses. You have really deep depth, long tracking shots where you have the sliding door in the hospital, where there's a lot of action going in. A lot of multiple angles of one scene. He used that in Snake Eyes. You have one big event, but multiple angles of what you can perceive it. So, as well as interchanging depths, like you have like the John Travolta facing this way, where you have action going on, but then you're focusing on what the dialogue happening, not so much what is.
Yeah, he places unusual focus in his. Since I always think back, I mean, it's not this film, but I think back to Carrie when they're asking about Tommy Ross's poem, and your focus is William Katt's right in that forefront of that shot, and Carrie is blurred, but she's the one we're actually paying attention to how she's going to respond. And I think that's kind of like how this one works too. There's a great shot of Jack, I think, on the bridge doing that same thing, where you're focused on him, but what you really want to focus on is what's going on in around him.
Yeah,
you're not allowed to.
I just recently we watched it just for the show, and something that catch me again after seeing this multiple times is how much close-up is in this movie.
Yeah, and
even though
that's easy to do when you've got a handsome John Travolta, in the forefront, of course, the beautiful Nancy Allen as well. I really like the character of Jack. I think he, having worked around people in the film industry, I can totally see a John Travolta as Jack being someone that I would encounter on a film set. And he's one of those guys too that he takes great pride in his work, even though his work is kind of played in this film as being like, I mean, he's a horror film, schlocky.
It's almost
sound guy, and the only people who really, like, those people don't get the credit that they need. And I could see someone like Jack being like really proud of his work, but wanting to explore other avenues.
It's the cliche of what do you do? Well, I work on movies. What do you do? Sound.
Yeah, it's the redheaded stepchild of filming. If you're not in film, that's why we have a sound editing and a sound mixing Academy Award, and no one knows the difference, and no one really decides. So they just give it to their two favorite sound films, and so I can see that being something that Jack as a character could exist. I really, really liked John Lithgow's work because he's a villain who kind of becomes more than the story he's involved in.
He's a very much introverted killer.
Yeah, and some of the stuff that he gets to do, I mean, he gets a lot of these scenes on the phone where he's kind of monologuing, I mean, he's having a conversation, but we don't know what's going on the other side of it.
Right,
and I really like how his voice modulates and changes depending on what he's trying to portray to the people outside the phone booth, as well as the people he's communicating with inside. He's a really interesting. We don't see him do villainous roles, like really hard villainous roles.
No, he was fractured in Raising Cain. He wasn't really like a bad guy, but he was completely fractured. He did a great serial killer in the Dexter TV series.
Oh, that's right. Yes,
which almost translates from this movie.
Yeah,
his character.
I really dig the music. Pino Donaggio, who I hope I got it right there. But he's one of those guys who has done some of these bigger films. He's really worked on some big ticket stuff. Of course, doing Carrie and of this film. He's also done some smaller films too, like Seed of Chucky, which is the worst Child's Play movie. He did Catacombs back in the '80s, which is really fun little horror film.
I do remember that one.
Yeah, I think his music is really interesting, and he's a perfect fit musically for where De Palma was at the time. I don't think they would have had as much connection later on, but right where the two people were in their current states in 1981, it was really good. A really great collaboration. And actually the music, the main theme, the Sally and Jack theme, I knew I had heard it before because I hadn't seen this movie until the weekend. And I knew I had heard this music. It was reused in Grindhouse. Tarantino brought it back for Grindhouse.
How did you dig that
I heard it, and actually later, after the movie got done, I was like, I think that was from Carrie. So I rewatched Carrie after watching this movie. It was 3 in the morning, and I was just going through trying to figure it out.
Massive impressive detective work there.
But I think, that it's an iconic score for how little you actually get it, because they share a lot of scenes together, Nancy Allen and John Travolta. But you don't get that score until it really matters to get it, you know?
So you got a lot of well-accomplished people that make it in this movie. So you got Brian De Palma directing it, kind of writing it. Mm-hmm. I think Paul Hirsch edited the movie.
Yes.
And then cinephiles will know about Paul Hirsch. He edited Star Wars. He edited Empire Strikes Back. Ferris Bueller. So he's another one of those accomplished people in his profession. You have Zygmunt.
Vilmos Zygmunt. I think we got it.
The cinematographer who's done, Deer Hunter, Godfather 1 and 2, and Deliverance. And
Close Encounters.
Close Encounters.
He also worked with De Palma later on Black Dahlia.
I read that he's not really appreciative of the film. He doesn't like the look of the film, but he knows that that's what the film needed. So he would rather go a little more or less harsh with the lights, but that's what I think pops out to you is how dynamic color is in this film.
Yeah, I agree. I think I can see why Zsigmond didn't like the finished product. I can understand that because it's not a very pretty movie. Like,
No.
At no point is it
Even though
visually, chewy.
It looks just from going from my memory, it feels like it's like a gutted midway or a fair, going to the fair, going to a clown. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like getting out of a really scummy fair and you want to go home and shower off. You don't feel clean getting through the film.
They don't feel like it's all that pure.
Yeah.
Everything is all muddy. Yeah.
And it plays off too because for those of you that don't know, Blowout is kind of the shell of the film is based on a film Blow Up. Michelangelo Antonioni, I think, made a film about basically a guy who captures on camera a crime happening, and this is kind of replicated, but just a sister film to it.
Yeah,
and
if you didn't know, Brian De Palma uses other materials for his inspirations, kind of like Body Double is Rear Window, and Raising Cain is Psycho, and
he kind of takes a shell and applies like a De Palma paint job to it,
Yeah.
And I think that that's kind of a cool sisterhood to have here. But then you also get too, since it's not a film based around a camera and images, you can have a dirtier cinematography. You can have kind of a grungierness to it as long as the sound effects in the film work. And I believe that they do. I think the sound is very effective, and it kind of gives that obsession level to Jack's journey. There's multiple times throughout the film where he's just playing it back, trying to get the images to work so we can, connect the audio and the video. The obsession really works for Jack, and I think having a strong sound and I don't want to say weaker visual sense, but like a dirtier one, just one that you kind of like your mind is focused on the sound.
So initially you think, okay, we're just going to concentrate on the sound department. We have great audio and video. Video's going to be second. Not necessarily true. They're just really focusing on the look of it, the texture of it. I do like the beginning of it because he's almost making a mockery of the slasher films and how cheapy it looks and how he can just make a mockery of it, and it actually looks sometimes better than some of the slasher films.
And he's kind of he's joking around with it. Of course, coming from things like Carrie and some other horror films, like he's got a knack for it. He gets to do his signature, a single take, the long take. I bet that was a tough one to accomplish.
And the point of view for the
moving. But the beauty of it is too, like if you mess up a shot like that, you're filming a low budget horror movie where they probably don't have the budget to do a reshoot. So if someone messes up, you just kind of roll with it sometimes. So I think that really works. I think it's fun that he takes a lot of things that he's aware of in the films. Like if you guys notice, they're talking about real films when they're talking about the movies that Jack was working on and involved in. Actually, Bordello of Blood is mentioned, which was a screenplay from Zemeckis and Bob Gale before Back to the Future that became a Tales from the Crypt movie later on. Like the internal knowledge of what's going on in film is really cool in this. And I think
there's a little bit of Easter eggs that weren't even developed until after the movie.
So that came later on then too, which I think is really cool.
You get this whole play at the end of American Metaphor and how it goes big and massive, and of course it's Brian De Palma, so you're going to go at the end massive and multi-angles.
Yeah, and you get, there's a gorgeous shot. We won't say what happens at the end of the film, but there's a gorgeous shot at the end that really America's above you, I guess, and it's an interesting final, kind of confrontational finale to the film because it takes place all around this cracking of the Liberty Bell and fracturing of the American social life that works really well there. So I really quite enjoyed this film. Going off the top, a couple things I didn't like though. I didn't like Nancy Allen in the movie. I'm sorry to say it. I know that she was kind of playing a kind of almost a trope of like the noir woman who plays dumber than she is, may have some secrets. I didn't connect with her at all. She described her character as a ragdoll, and I couldn't agree with that more, but I don't want a ragdoll as my leading lady.
Even though Nancy Allen was married to Brian De Palma, I think he didn't want her in the movie, but John Travolta
when Travolta was involved too, I guess some producers wanted to get Olivia Newton-John to play the female and have them team back up, and I know that had, De Palma was very much against that, so he may have thrown his own wife in there as hey, you two work together on Carrie, let's get you back together again. But
one of the big minuses with Brian De Palma is he doesn't have very developed in depth female characters in his movies.
Yeah, I think the only one would be Carrie.
So there's Nancy Allen's character doesn't really have a lot to work with. She's just playing doe-eyed throughout the whole movie. And, Yeah, and that's something that he definitely needed to work with.
Yeah, definitely. So that was one thing I really didn't connect with. There was also, I feel like the pacing right around the middle of the film kind of slows down because we get all these great developments, things like the audio connections with the photographs and working that in. And I think De Palma expands his narrative about halfway through to cover some things that don't end up like reaching around. We're all really invested in that main narrative plot line.
Yeah.
There's a few kind of extra pieces, some fluff that I felt was going somewhere, and but then it refocuses
the whole
back on the narrative.
and talking to the cops and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
and so that's the only other thing where I was like, yeah, I wish that part would just tighten up a little bit more, and I think the fluidity of the film would be a lot better. Is there anything you kind of?
I agree with your criticism. The second act and the middle part of the movie is where it drives.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it really drags. First and third really is what puts it on.
It's great to have the film open, of course, with like that in media res like filming of a horror movie, and it's so obvious in that opening too. But then
you get
within
mission,
10 minutes, you've got your inciting incident, but no part of that getting to that first 10 minutes is boring at all. And the film kind of only starts to chug stall a little bit at an hour
as he becomes part of the police investigation.
Yeah, and then when Burke finally, like Burke's character really comes to the forefront of the film, and we're really getting some moments with him because he kind of disappears and kind of muddles around for a half hour. Then he kind of comes back in that last 30 minutes, and I think it's a really powerful finale there too. With like I said, I love John Lithgow. Why not? So
I know.
Yeah. So that's our thoughts on Blowout there, Nick. So I mean, I'm assuming recommendation from you.
It's one of my favorite Brian De Palma. I'm a huge Brian De Palma fan. Even though when he's bad, I do watch his stuff.
Is this your favorite one of his films? Or?
The Fury would be my favorite.
Okay.
And then probably Untouchables and Raising Cain and Body Double. So it's a huge library. But yeah, Blowout is, I think, if you're going to see a Brian De Palma film, watch that one first. Get a sample of what...
I think this is the most... like if you put Brian De Palma in a juicer, you'd get Blowout would come out of the bottom.
Right.
Because it's literally just him. Like it's his essence as a filmmaker that really is strong.
More him than any other of his movies. Yeah.
Because you get things like Scarface, which was a remake. You get things like Carrie, which is based on a book, and then you get like all these other films that he did that were kind of influenced by other things. And this really is him. Sure, he uses the husk of blow up, but it's really him as a filmmaker. He was inspired to make it. And so I'm going to recommend it as well. I still my favorite De Palma films, of course, like Carrie, followed by Untouchables, followed by Scarface. But I think Blowout is going to pop right there in number 4. So I really enjoyed the film overall, and I think it's definitely, for a guy who's had such a varied career with some real great hits and some real big misses, Blowout stands near the top of that list still. So
I agree.
Definitely. So thanks, guys, for joining us. So if you guys are interested in getting more Kyle and Nick on film, you can check out our Patreon, patreon.com/Kyle Nick on film.
Yeah.
Go ahead and check out some of the tiers we've got over there. If you guys can't afford to be part of the Patreon, hey, you can support us in other ways too. Click a like down at the bottom right there. It's super quick. I guarantee you less than 2 seconds. Go ahead and comment with your thoughts on Blowout. If you haven't seen the film,
Please
you
do.
can actually find it for free on IMDb TV and Tubi TV right now. Watch it. You just got to go through some commercials. And then consider subscribing for more content too. We got new episodes every single week.
We love to hear from you.
Yeah, definitely. So that's it for everybody, guys. You can find me at Almighty Goatman on Twitter and Instagram. You can follow Goat Film Reviews on Facebook or check out goatfilmreviews.com for all my reviews. Nick, where can we find you?
You can find the St. Paul Filmcast, where to interview local independent filmmakers from the Minnesota area on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play.
All right, fantastic. Thanks, guys, for joining us. And until next time, we'll see you.
Thank you.